Hello sewers, today we're going to have a look at the AccuQuilt Crazy Quilt die. This is the packet here. This one finishes at 6 inches, so you can match it up with any 6-inch block or double it up for 12-inch blocks. This is what the die itself looks like. It has letters printed where each shape is, and it's actually perfect for layer cakes if you have those, or if you want to cut your fabric from the yards or whatever you want to do. Just remember that you do need to follow the instructions about the straight grain going this way. I did try just putting them any which way, and I found because of the shapes there was a bit of stretch in ways I didn't want. So I've done a few test blocks in that, as I always do, and I just layered it up as you normally do. You can put those together in any way you want, it doesn't matter. And the good thing about it is there's not really any seams to match, but you could also join them up with sashing in between. So in the shop I'm going to give you some sets. I've made just one with a lot in there. There's 10 sets in this one, and it comes with the instructions on a sheet of paper like this, and it comes with a piece of card where I've drawn those shapes from the die, so you can set your shapes out in the correct place, because as those things are getting moved around the pieces tend to fall down a bit, which you can see on this one how they've fallen down. But you've got the card there to show you where to put them, and the instructions in the packet. So the first thing, of course, that I would tell you to do is to lay out your pieces on your piece of cardboard. Now if you're going to do a lot, if you already have the die, or if you just want to do the test block, if you want to write the names on there on a sticky note you can, but I've written underneath so that you can just match up those shapes. You'll know if they're wrong because they won't fit the shape, so you put them round the right way. Now if you follow the instructions, it tells you that you're going to press all the seams open so that you don't have as much bulk, and that is exactly what I did with mine. I pressed all my seams open, and it wasn't too difficult. I wouldn't recommend just going ahead and sewing anything. Just leave that out of the way. I think it's better to follow their instructions so that you are getting the pieces together and you don't struggle with any odd corners and things. I found it quite easy, so I'm going to go through now. I'm going to turn it round so I've got it facing me the right way. Today I've got my iron here, which I don't normally do because I like to get up and down. I don't like to be sitting in one spot all the time. I'm going to have my instructions right there in front of me, and first of all it says sew A to B. So all we need to do is line them up. There's no notches, you won't need to pin. They match up pretty well. Put them through with your 1/4 inch seam, as always. And as I said, we're going to press those seams open today. I've just pulled out a little stitch on the end there, but that's okay. So what I like to do when I press my seams is just quickly set them, and then with my finger I'll just be opening up this seam a little bit. I don't like putting my finger right in front of the iron, it's not safe. Quick press from that side. I'll take off my stickers, which I forgot to take off. We don't want those pressed to it. And a quick press from that side. And that's my AB shape. And you can place that back onto here if you need to. And there you can see where the two sit. Now the next one you're going to add to that is C. Same way, pick it up, lay it on top. Do your 1/4 inch seam. I've got my 1/4 inch foot on there, but you can do it whichever way you like. And it's just on whatever the normal stitch length was. again, I'm going to just set that, open it up with my fingers with a little bit of a gentle press. Press that, turn it over. I always like to look at the front to make sure that I haven't pressed any odd creases. Now once you've done those first steps, this is now 1, 2, 3, we've already finished. You can lay them back onto your board there so they stay in place and they don't get mixed up. The next step, step 4, says to sew E and D. So this is E and this is D. Now if you leave them that way, you won't get confused about where they go together, because these two bits are where they join. So I'm just going to turn them around the right way. I'm going to flip that one over, pop it under my foot, and join those two. Again with that 1/4 inch seam. Take your time, make sure you match them and you do the seam correctly. The 1/4 inch seam is important if you want everything to match up nicely. Again, we're going to press open. If you have one of those little shovel irons, you can use that for this one because the seams are very small. This is my baby iron that I use for doing small seams. It's a bit less harsh on my wrists and hands. Now I'm going to place this one back on my board. So I've joined D and E. I'm going to place them back there. The next step, step 5, says to join G and F. So this is G and this is F. And so I'm going to flip G over the top of F, and you can see how that joins up, and so that seam. Sometimes you can just feel it doing that little bunch up. Set your seam, open it up, quick press on that side, quick press on the right side, and now I'll place that one back where G and F were joined. The next step is step 6, and that's H, this one, and I. So there's H, there's I. I'm just going to flip H down straight from that position over the I. That's the seam there. Remember, you can pin if you want to. You could pin these all together and then sew them one after the other, or you can have a whole group of them and sew all your ABs, which is what I did. When I did my test blocks, I wanted to see if chain piecing was easy, and it was. Again, I'm pressing open. We don't always press open because it's quicker to press to the side, but in this case I took their advice and thought, yes, I better press open with all the seams. So I'm putting that one down. Now I've got one left that I haven't sewn to anything. That's J over here, and the instruction tells me that I have to sew J to H and I. Now I've got them in their position and I've got J in its position, so if I flip it over I can see where it's meant to go, and then I pick that up and join that one. Now if you get confused going from there to the machine, just put it back there, double check that you've got it in the right spot. It's easier than unpicking and quicker. It's worth checking if you think, oh, did I get that right? It's worth checking. And now that you've got a seam underneath there, just make sure it stays flat as you go across it. You can always sew with that on top if you like. I'm just checking my end to make sure it matches. And I've left my needle up for this one because I'm not chain piecing and I'm going up and down all the time. Okay, so setting that seam again, opening it up with my finger, well away from that hot iron. If you're teaching children how to sew, you should teach them all these safety features. And then another press on the back, flip it over, make sure you haven't twisted that other seam, and then give it a press from the front. Now place that back where it belonged, JHI. So this is where we are now. This is step 7. We've got this one just done. So we're down to now having only 4 sets. Step 8 says sew JHI to FG, which is this one. So if we look at it and we slide them across towards each other, we can see where they're meant to go. Flip it over. It matches up there, and I'll just turn that around so my template is the right way for me. Checking my ends. And you can start either end, it doesn't matter, but remember that you have got some flat seams that you want to make sure stay flat. You don't want to bunch them up on the back, so I'll be checking that as I go. If you press them, you don't have as much trouble with them bunching up. Just making sure my corner's right. Now, for this block, I just had some coordinated batiks that I cut up, but you can see in the other ones I showed you before, they were just a mixture of all sorts of fabrics. So you can use any of your fabrics. You can mix your batiks with your normals. You could even do this the old-fashioned sort of crazy block way by putting in, you know, a bit of satin or something like that. Okay, now that's G, H, I, J and G and F all joined together. And you can see how much smaller everything's becoming once you take out those 1/4 inch seams. So that's one part. So my next step says sew D and E to this. So here's my D and E here. And I've left them, as I said, on there. That's that. So all I do is put them next to each other, line them up, flip that over, and I'll just turn my template around so it's easier. Match up the end, and I'm going to keep an eye on those seams to keep them flat again. And still sewing with a 1/4 inch all the time. If you're not good with your 1/4 inch yet, it's worth practicing. Get my end together, and I'm going to put my finger on top of where that seam is, because it did just flip up, and if I put my finger on top of that seam, it won't flip up as it goes through. If you're finding it tricky, I often use this purple thing or my stiletto. That's my stiletto there. But the purple thing I do like because I can check my 1/4 inch seams with the end of it. It's got a little 1/4 inch bit there, so I can check if my seams are good. Because sometimes when you're using different fabric, you may need to change your width a little bit depending on if the fabric is a lot thicker or thinner than you would normally use. pressing again. And although we're stopping to press in between, it really doesn't take very much time. We've almost finished this block. Well, I've almost finished. And when you're doing a whole lot, it's a lot quicker. So now we're down to step 10, which is join this to this. And we don't actually even have to trim this block when we're finished. It's neat enough that it's okay. So we just flip that up. We can see that matches that bit. We can keep the template for another time. Line up these ones. And I'm just going to check those underneath seams to make sure they stay flat because they are open. And making sure, this is a long seam, so make sure it's all lined up. And check the underneath one, because they are on an angle, so they can get tucked under. Now, it might have looked like I was pulling that because I was lining up the seam, but I wasn't pulling at it, I was just gently moving it across. And that is our last seam, and you'll see now, as soon as I've ironed this, once I've ironed this seam open, I've kept all my seams at the back flat. Just get this open with my finger first. Then I'll bring in my iron, which is nice and hot. I'm not using any steam at the moment. I'll give it a steam press after. Press that last seam. And that's our finished block. So there it is. And the instructions were very simple. And you can see that it's quite different to this one. So the block looks quite different depending on what kind of fabrics you use. So this one is coordinated, let's say, because it came from the same group of batiks. And this one is lots of different colours. And you could do it as I did with this one, with a coordinated set. These are all that mustardy yellow colour, and I added some greys and whites to them. So personal preference, and it's a quick one, and I actually quite like it. It does come in a 10-inch block too, but I do like the 6-inch one. And if you look at the edges, if I put it up here, I can't really see what you're seeing. You can tell the edges are pretty good. You don't need to do any trimming. You can use that straight away, either to join to another crazy block or whatever else you might be joining it to. Now, they'll be available in the shop. I've only made one set so far, but I've drawn up quite a few templates and I am ready to pack some more, and I'll get those in to Sewer's Delight next week. Thank you.